Currently, ASEAN has 11 members in principle, when Timor-Leste has been approved by the leaders of the countries, just waiting for this country to complete some criteria and officially sign the agreements. With 11 members spanning 48 longitudes, more than 5,000 kilometers, the area currently has quite a few time zones being displayed. So, the issue of applying a common time zone for the whole ASEAN has been proposed many times. What these recommendations are, and what are the recommended time zones, we'll take a look at in today's video. Currently, how many time zones does ASEAN have? ASEAN lies from the western border of Myanmar, at longitude 92 degrees east, to the center of the island of Papua, Indonesia, at longitude 140 degrees east, including the following time zones. The latest time zone is UTC plus 630 for Myanmar only. Time zone plus 7 applies to all 4 countries: Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and the western part of Indonesia, including Central and West Kalimantan and the islands of Sumatra, Java, etc. Time zone plus 8 conducted in Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, and the middle of Indonesia, including Northeast and South Kalimantan, Sulawesi Island, Nusa Tenggara, and Bali. Time zone plus 9 applies in Timor-Leste and the rest in East Indonesia. Thus, there are 4 time zones being displayed in Southeast Asia. Except for Indonesia, which has 3 time zones, the remaining countries each use only 1 time zone for their entire land. Common Time Zone. The ASEAN Common Time, ACT, was first proposed by Singapore in 1995. At this time they proposed a common time zone of +8. A year later, 1996, in the statement of the 29th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting in Indonesia, stated that the foreign ministers welcomed the initiative to establish a working group to discuss the merits of the proposal of having an ASEAN common time zone. In a meeting of government leaders of the member countries in the same year, it was also said that the heads of government agreed to review the matter during the period of 2000 to 2003, but in reality, there are no significant results. In 2004, in a letter from the Prime Minister of Malaysia towards the establishment of the ASEAN community, the proposal was repeated. He said that the ASEAN community would needs to present itself in images and symbols that are identifiably ASEAN in character, as an ASEAN common time zone, an ASEAN common travel document, or more ambitiously, an ASEAN common currency. In 2015, in Kuala Lumpur, the ASEAN community was officially established, and as ASEAN chair that year, Malaysia once again brought the idea of a common time zone to discuss. And the proposal this time is also +8 time zone. This time zone was supported by Indonesia and Singapore, although Indonesia itself was still applying 3 time zones. The president of this country agreed to switch to a central time zone was an initial success, and it was also quite surprising that it was thought that Indonesia was the country with the most difficulties if using the same time zone for their entire territory. As for Myanmar, Thailand, and Cambodia, they disagreed, because the +8 time zone is too early compared to their geographical location and people's living habits. Looking at the map, we see that almost all mainland Southeast Asian countries seem to be more suitable for the +7 time zone. Even geographically, Singapore and the western part of Malaysia should have +7 time zone. They are located far to the west compared to Vietnam. The sun sets later, but the time zone is applied an hour earlier than Vietnam. The reason they chose +8 is because they share the same time with Hong Kong and China, dynamic economic regions in Asia, with a lot of trade with these 2 countries. The idea of a common ASEAN time zone proposed by Singapore and Malaysia coincides with the time zone they are using. So it may be a bit difficult to convince other countries, but if they are using +7 or +6.5 time, they suggest exporting the common time zone of +8 might have been more favored. The proposed ASEAN Common Time has a number of benefits that will make it easier for ASEAN countries to coordinate trade, business transactions, and transport links, especially maritime and aviation. There will be a good mix of stock markets and banks, as opening and closing hours are the same in all cities in the region. As for government agencies, law enforcement agencies of countries, it is also easy to deal with multinational commercial, legal, investment. However, the basic difficulty, common hour, will not be appropriate with the light shining on each area. If we apply the common time for the whole of Southeast Asia, there are places where the sun rises at 5 o'clock, and where it dawns at 7 o'clock. ASEAN operates on the principle of consensus, which means that all matters must be consulted by all member countries, and decisions are only adopted when all member countries agree or do not object. So if there is a country that opposes this idea, it will never be implemented. For Vietnam, Laos, located in the center of Southeast Asia, the application of +7 or +8 hours does not make much difference, even +6:30 or +8:30 is acceptable. As for Indonesia, they have supported it, not saying it. For the Philippines and Brunei, they are already using the +8 time zone, so there is no problem. Thailand and Cambodia are just a matter of habit. But Myanmar, difficult for them. If they move in 1 5-hour earlier, the current time it will change a lot. Regarding personal opinion, of a Vietnamese in the ASEAN community, I support this ASEAN common time. But about choosing a certain time is difficult. It might be +7:30 for it to be a good match, but it's so different from Asia, perhaps even less consensus. In summary, ASEAN Common Time Zone has obvious benefits, but there are still many problems. In your opinion, should this issue be applied? And what measure, what time zone will be the most reasonable? Please leave a comment. Thank you very much.